Hello, you guys. Welcome to another bonus episode of the Crime with Kylie podcast, where we're going to be talking about some Reddit Let's Not Meet stories. And the commonality between all four stories is that dating went terribly wrong. Stalkers, creeps, assholes, potential murderers. And after reading them myself, I am so glad that I am no longer in the dating pool. Before we get into the stories, I do have to disclose that we'll be talking about some sensitive and graphic content. Some of the content is also sexually explicit, so if that is not for you, no worries. I will see you on another episode. Alright, without further ado, let's get started. To my troubled Tinder date, Let's Not Meet Again, by Alex Stunning. I met a guy on Tinder and we really started to hit it off. We'd been chatting for a few weeks and even discovered that we had a few mutual friends. I was pretty intoxicated one night and was feeling social and decided to call an Uber to his place. Once I got there, we talked outside for a while and ended up vibing even better in person. I opened up to him about my health problems and he opened up to me about his older sister who had passed away from a similar condition to mine. I was curious about his sister, but I definitely didn't want to pry. We walked into his house and it smelled like 1,000 dead rats were rotting under the floorboards. I was still pretty drunk, so I tried to forgive it because, hey, sometimes animals die under a house or in the walls and there's nothing you can really do about it. I start to look around and the whole house looks like a cluttered storage unit. He takes me to his room, which is seemingly normal, kind of feminine, but that's cool, and we hook up. I ended up falling asleep there and woke up around 10 a.m. to the stench of death. I opened my eyes feeling very sober and started to look around the room. I noticed that only girls' clothes were hung in the closet. I started to assume I've possibly been cheated with. Then I see a giant black binder on his nightstand. When he woke up, I decided to jokingly ask him what's in that giant binder. Turns out it was every single episode of the Golden Girls printed out. He said he quote-unquote read it at work and that it's the only show he'll ever watch. Okay? I asked him what he did for work, something I definitely should have known by this point, and he dodged the question. I sat up and looked at the pillow I'd been cozily sleeping on. It had no pillowcase and it was covered in what looked like blood. It looked like the blood had been coughed onto it. I started putting the unpleasant pieces together. I asked as sensitively as I could, "Hey, was this your sister's room? I noticed the clothes in your closet." He says, "Yeah, and this is her bed. I haven't changed or washed anything. It just makes me feel better to be in her bed. This is actually where I held her and she died, and you remind me so much of her. I really, really like you." And then casually tried to hook up with me like he didn't just drop unsettling as fuck news. I felt immensely sorry for him, but needed to get out of there. I made some excuse and left. I decided to not entirely ghost him because of how bad I felt for him. He was clearly dealing with some really, really dark shit. We kept in contact for a few weeks until I went on the Find My Friends app and noticed that he had clearly taken my phone while I was asleep that night, and he shared my location with himself. I called him out and went off. This was not my first rodeo with a stalker type and I was not dealing with it. He told me he, quote-unquote, couldn't believe I thought he would do that, and, quote-unquote, I'm being a really terrible person by dumping him because his cat had recently died. I blocked him. After he said that about his cat, combined with his tendency to hold on to things, it really makes me wonder what that smell actually was. Let's hope not, and though I hope he gets help, let's not meet again. Let's hope not, and though I hope he gets help, let's not meet again. Edit, I found out from a mutual friend that his sister had passed away around 10 years prior to this. Edit 2, I forgot to mention this, but he was strangely turned on while I was using a nebulizer with my inhaler. He said that his sister had one of those. I am 100% sure that this turned him on. Edit 3, I'm pretty sure he still uses Reddit, and I don't know if this post is going to get popular, so I'm kinda scared now. Oh well. Edit 4, Golden Girls was on the whole time I was over. Don't know why I forgot to mention this. Story number 2. Gay Online Dating Horror. Submitted by Mr. Matty Cakes. This story happened about a year ago, a couple of weeks after I broke up with my boyfriend of 2 years. I was on the receiving end of the breakup and was a complete mess. I was in college and living at home for the summer in a very small town during the course of these events. A friend of mine was consoling me and created my very first online dating profile for me because gay men can sometimes think that more sex is a solution to everything. His intentions were good, and I have to admit that some of the men contacting me were very attractive, but I didn't really know how to use the website very well, and I started to text a couple of guys I had met. This is where Robert comes into play. On the surface, well, below the neck, Rob was a 6'3" gorgeous man who competed in bodybuilding competitions. Unfortunately, his face looked something like an axe murderer. His teeth were fucked, he wore glasses with those really thin metallic frames, and his hair looked like his mom still cut it. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, and he seemed like a really nice guy. That first night we texted, we probably stayed up till 2 a.m. talking about our lives. I heard a few things which aren't really red flags, but are usually turn-offs in what I look for a date. For a guy in his late 20s, Rob didn't have much of a career. He was a high school track assistant coach, and I wasn't really sure if he got paid for this job. Now on to sex. I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit this online, but I am a complete bottom, so when I look for a potential partner, it's important to me that he is a complete top. Anything else just doesn't turn me on. So when Rob admitted to me that he was a versatile top, mostly top, but sometimes likes it both ways, I have to admit that I knew I would never meet him. I'm a little bit shallow, I know. Anyway, I tried to be open-minded. The next day he wished me good morning. What? And said we should go on a date that day. Again. What? I told him in detail how I was just broken up with and didn't really want to meet a guy for dinner and cry from the appetizer to dessert. He understood and agreed, and then asked me out 3 hours later. Odd. This creeped me out and I stopped talking to him. Rob began to call me several times a day. What made this stranger was the fact that it was every day at a few specific times, 10:17 a.m. and 9:17 p.m. every day. Sometimes he would call 3 times in a row, but always starting at 10:17 a.m. Obviously, I never picked up the phone. Considering I texted Rob for less than a 12-hour period, this began to frighten me. I mentioned the story as a joke to another one of my friends who was a police officer, but he took it more seriously than I expected. He told me that I should delete the profile, which I hadn't thought to do, and be very careful. I deleted the profile right in front of him. 30 seconds later, I got a text in all caps saying, "Why did you delete your profile?" I was startled. I can't say for sure, but it looked like he was continually monitoring my now abandoned profile on the website throughout the day. Getting more uneasy, my morning phone calls began to seriously worry me. Luckily, a week or so, and roughly 40 missed phone calls later, he seemed to finally be getting the message. I really wish that previous statement was correct. One morning, my mom walked in with the day's mail. She handed me a large manila envelope with a handwritten address that appeared to be scribbled by a child. I thought it was a piece of artwork from one of the several children I babysat, so I opened it happily. I have never been more wrong in my life. Out of the envelope came a 2-page long typed letter, a complete chat log of our conversation on the website, a complete text log of our SMS conversation, and a full 8.5 by 11 copy of my profile photo taken from the website. I should also mention that I have absolutely no idea how he obtained my address. I also don't even know how you can make a text log without typing up the entire conversation itself. And he must have copied my photo from the website long before that. Fucking weird. I immediately began sobbing at this 20 pages of horror that fell out of that envelope. I will also admit to this day that I have never read that typed letter. All I know is that it ended with a huge, creepy smiley face. My mom saw that I was crying and I told her I was being stalked. She asked me, "Who is doing this?" And I gave her Rob's full name. What happened next sent me completely over the edge. My mom began crying too and told me that Rob had been emailing her pretending to want to donate to her charity. My mom began to freak out as well when he began to ask her about her children and she stopped the email conversation. Now, both of us crying, I called the local police department and told them I was being stalked and somehow the man had found my address. And he was also contacting my family members. A policeman was sent to our house and he went through all of our documents and told us that although he had clearly become angry, he wasn't threatening violence and there was nothing the police could do. When we were walking the police officer to his patrol car, an unfamiliar car was parked across the street. It was Rob. After being such an emotional wreck from the day, for some reason I didn't get too spooked at that moment. The police officer didn't realize who he was, but once Rob saw me standing with the cop, he probably got nervous and I never heard from him again. Let's Not Meet: Murderer from Online Dating Site by Jade Raven. Hope this is appropriate for here. Disclaimer, I'm no longer active on OKC. This was in 2015. I wasn't really actively looking, but would pop onto OKC every few weeks to see if anything interesting was in my inbox. Being female, I had a very active inbox. Sorry guys. Noticed an email from an interesting, fairly local guy. Email was alright, asking about polyamory, which I don't mind talking about if the person asking is sincerely interested and respectful. We got to chatting. I had zero romantic sexual interest, but thought this could be a friendship. After a few months of chatting, he found me on Book of Faces and asked if it was okay to send an ad request. I agreed. We'd been chatting, getting along very well, and he seemed like a nice person. A little weird, but that's okay, I'm a little weird myself. We continued to chat here and there for about 2 years. Sent birthday greetings, just casual friendship. He asked several times to meet, to hang out, etc. I've considered it, but at that time I was running my own business and working upwards of 70 hours a week, plus maintaining my home, raising my younger child, my oldest is an adult, and trying to balance 2 partners and an extremely needing, demanding workaholic client who had no boundaries. 11 p.m. phone calls occurred without a note of hesitation or remorse. On vacation? Ha ha ha. so meetup never occurred, but we kept in touch online. Late last year, a news story broke out about a man and his girlfriend raping and murdering her young teenage daughter. I never connected the name until a friend contacted me and said, "Oh, I see you're friends with XXX. Did you see the news?" The news stories use his full legal name, not his nickname. Think Richard versus Dick, which is why I never connected the two. It was him. My then online friend of 2 years had beaten, raped, strangled, and then dismembered his girlfriend's teenage daughter with his girlfriend's help. He's made several statements since then stating that he's always had this rape-murder fantasy, and that this child was very sexual, and that it wasn't much fun, murdering her, as he apparently thought it would be. It still sends chills down my spine. I dodged a bullet. Big time. Be safe out there. You never know who's on the other side of that keyboard or phone call. Okay guys, we'll get to the fourth story in 1 minute, but I think I actually found the murderer that the last post was talking about. So in 2018, Robert Kern Jr. was convicted of raping and murdering his girlfriend's teenage daughter. And I'm about 98% sure that this is the right guy because the post was from 5 years ago, the articles I found and the crime was from 5 years ago, and Robert, kind of like Richard, has the shorter version, Rob, so she could have known a guy named Rob. So anyways, I'm just going to read you guys a little bit about what happened specifically, and I'll do a short post on this, and I'm sure I'll do a podcast eventually, but a Florida man will spend the rest of his life behind bars for the sexual assault and killing of his girlfriend's teenage daughter more than 4 years ago. Robert Kern Jr., 43, was found guilty by a jury in Volusia County on Monday in the 2018 first-degree murder of his then-girlfriend's 16-year-old daughter, Justice Marie Garrett. He was also convicted and sentenced to an additional concurrent 5-year prison term on an evidence tampering charge for attempting to cover up his crime. Robert Kern had been tasked with driving Garrett to a high school in Mount Dora on April 13th of 2018 after she missed her bus, prosecutors said in trial. Instead, he drove the teenager in his Ford Explorer to a wooded area in Volusia County and then raped and killed her. Garrett last used her phone at 6:48 a.m. that morning to post a selfie on Snapchat, prosecutors said, and Kern texted her mother at 7:26 a.m. He said that he dropped her off at school, the paper reported, but the girl never made it to school, and Kern's cell phone records show that he was nowhere near the school when he sent the message. Prosecutors suspect Kern possibly drugged or physically incapacitated the teenager prior to killing her. This is noted by a fracture on her nose. From 8:12 until 9:17 a.m., Garrett's phone remained stationary in the area where her body was eventually found. Her phone started moving again at 9:17 a.m. and pinged off of the same tower as Kern's phone near where the body was found later that morning. Kern then drove to the girl's high school before turning her phone off and getting rid of it. He convinced her mom, who he was dating, not to immediately report her daughter missing and later to tell the police that she was with him when they both took Garrett to school. Okay, that is absolutely sickening. The fact that the mom knew that her daughter was missing, her daughter didn't come home from school, and this boyfriend is just being like, and he looks creepy. I will put a photo of him on the screen. He just looks all sorts of fucked up. And she, like, I have a daughter. I could not imagine, let alone having a strange man around her. Like, him being like, yeah, your daughter's missing, but, like, don't report it and lie to the police. Anyways, that is definitely a case we need to cover on here, so we will get into that shortly, after the Alexi Treviso case. I'm just waiting on a new mic. Alright, hope you guys enjoyed that little tangent, and now we will cover the fourth story. This story is from Spoopy C. Jades. To my date that I met online, let's not meet again. When I was 20 years old, I felt lonely and wanted a boyfriend. Don't get me wrong, I have an amazing family that is always there for me. I just wanted a love life. I had never dated before, and I thought I would give online dating a try. I went through the usual swipe left or right to try to match up. I can't fully remember when, but at some point I got a message from this guy, let's call him O, saying that he thought I was cute and wanted to get to know me. Now this dating app or site did have a category thing that let the people seeing your profile know if you wanted to date or find a friend. I had mine of course set to date, but the guy that messaged me had it set to friend. I know he was only looking for a friend, but he was giving me attention, so I got sucked in. He was a year older than me and he did look cute. I later realized that he wanted a friends with benefits kind of thing. Now I know I was dumb to think this, but I thought that I could show him how kind and genuine I could be. Then maybe I could change his mind and he would want to date me. I ended up doing things that I am not proud of, and by things I mean BJ's, nothing else, but still I was naive. I was getting tired of being used and voiced my concerns. We were only seeing each other maybe 2 weeks. I would always ask if we could be something more, but he would tell me he wasn't ready yet. At some point he said we needed a break even though I thought we weren't boyfriend and girlfriend. I said okay and moved on. While this was going on, I was working at Home Depot as a customer service cashier. I am nice to everyone I meet and make friends really easily. My family would make fun of me because I can meet someone and in 5 minutes you would swear that we knew each other for years, which in that sense I'm really similar to my grandfather. I met this new coworker and worked in flooring while I was seeing O. Let's call my new coworker R. R and I would talk while at work. We had a lot of things in common. After O told me he needed a break, I started to talk with R a bit more. After a week, R asked me out and I thought, why not? Let's give him a chance. We went out on a date to Black Bear Diner and it went really well and I felt like I knew him for years and we just connected. Now a few days into it, I have a boyfriend who cared about me and O called me and I let him know that I had a boyfriend and was sorry, but no, I did not want to see him. He asked me why I started dating someone when we were on a break. I told him I was confused because we were never boyfriend and girlfriend and we were on a break. He asked me if he could wait for me because he knew we wouldn't last. I told him if he wanted to, sure, but we were happy and it would last. After this, he would message me often and try to call me. I had to block him from everything. 4 years go by and I marry R and we have a baby boy and move into an apartment and we change jobs. My husband, baby, and I were at Home Depot shopping when I accidentally broke my phone and needed to get a new one. Once I got a new phone, my small family went home and we went to sleep. While we were sleeping, I got a phone call at 3 in the morning. I ignored the call, but the same number called again and again. I answered and asked who was calling me and no one answered. I hung up and we went back to sleep, or at least I tried, and the same phone number texted me and said, "Hey Angela, sorry I called you." I texted back asking who it was. The next text scared me. "You know who this is. I always call you to see if my number is still blocked." I knew exactly who this was. I started to freak out because it had been 4 years and this person is literally still waiting for me. To my date that I met online, let's never meet again. Alright, you guys, thank you for listening to some dating stories gone wrong, some creepy let's not meet dating stories. In the Q&A, let me know which story 1, 2, 3, or 4 freaked you out the most. I'm curious. Or also let me know what kinds of let's not meet stories you want to hear next. Alright, bye.